The wind howls across black volcanic rocks. Waves crash against a coast where few people dare to live. This is Iceland, a frozen island near the Arctic Circle, and somewhere in this empty, wild land sits a prison unlike any other on Earth. But here's what nobody tells you: the prisoners don't want to leave. If you're curious about what makes this place so different, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment below and tell us, would you want to escape from this prison? Stay with us, because what you're about to discover will change everything you think you know about punishment. Let me take you back to where the strange story begins. Picture this: you're driving down a lonely road in southern Iceland. On one side, you see the Atlantic Ocean stretching forever. On the other side, mountains covered in snow and ice. You pass through a tiny village called Eyrarbakki. Only about 570 people live here. There's a church, a few houses, and then you see it. A building that looks almost normal. Too normal. No giant concrete walls. No barbed wire spiraling into the sky. No guard towers with soldiers holding rifles. Just a building, and a fence that honestly looks like it couldn't stop a determined teenager. This is Litla-Hraun, Iceland's biggest prison, their maximum security facility, the place where they send their most dangerous criminals. Wait, maximum security? With that fence, something doesn't add up. You see, most people think prisons should be scary, dark, filled with tiny cells and angry guards. Places that make you never want to break the law again. That's how it works in movies, right? That's how it works in most countries. But Iceland is different. Very different. Let me tell you about a country that sounds like it's from another planet. Iceland has only 400,000 people. That's less than the population of many single cities. Reykjavik, their capital, would be considered a small town in most countries. Everyone kind of knows everyone. Your cousin's friend probably knows your teacher's brother. It's that small. And crime? Well, here's where it gets weird. Most Icelanders never lock their doors. Children walk to school alone in the dark winter mornings. Cars are left running outside stores with the keys inside. Police officers don't even carry guns. They just don't need them. In one whole year, Iceland might have 1 or 2 murders. Sometimes 0. In big countries, that happens in a single day in a single city. So when Iceland needs to lock someone up, they're not dealing with thousands and thousands of criminals. They're dealing with about 150 people total in the entire country. That's fewer prisoners than most American high schools have students. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so they don't have much crime. Big deal. The few criminals they do have must be really bad, right? That's why they built Litla-Hraun. Here's where the mystery deepens. Litla-Hraun opened in 2016. Brand new, modern. The government spent years planning it. They looked at prisons around the world. They studied what worked and what didn't. And then they built something that made everyone scratch their heads. Inside Litla-Hraun, there are cells. But calling them cells feels wrong. Each prisoner gets their own room. And I mean room. There's a bed, a real bed, not some metal slab. A desk, a chair, a private bathroom with a shower, a window with actual sunlight. Some prisoners even have small TVs. The doors lock at night, yes. But during the day, prisoners walk around. They go to the kitchen. They cook their own meals. They do laundry. They attend classes. They work in workshops building furniture or learning trades. There are guards, but they don't carry weapons. They wear regular clothes, not intimidating uniforms. They're called servants in Icelandic, not guards. They eat lunch with the prisoners. They have conversations. They know everyone's names. One prisoner inside Litla-Hraun once said something that sounds impossible. I feel safer here than I did on the outside. How can a maximum security prison feel safe? But wait, it gets stranger. Behind Litla-Hraun, just a short drive away, there's another facility called Sogn. This one has even less security. The fence is lower. The rules are looser. Prisoners at Sogn actually leave the prison grounds every day. They go to regular jobs in nearby towns. They work in shops, in warehouses, on farms. At Sogn, prisoners breed Icelandic horses. These aren't just any horses, they're some of the most beautiful and expensive horses in the world. The prisoners care for them, train them, and even compete in horse shows. They're trusted with animals worth thousands of dollars. And here's the really crazy part. They could just walk away. The fence wouldn't stop them. The guards aren't watching every second. But they don't run. They stay. Why would someone choose to stay in prison? Let's talk about a typical day for a prisoner at Litla-Hraun, because this is where things stop making sense completely. 7 o'clock a.m. Wake up. Not to screaming guards or clanging metal bars. Just wake up. In your own room. 8 o'clock a.m. Breakfast. Prisoners go to a common kitchen. They prepare food together. Sometimes they make pancakes. Sometimes traditional Icelandic food like porridge or fish. They sit at tables and eat. Like a cafeteria. Like a school. 9 o'clock a.m. Work or education. Some prisoners go to workshops where they learn carpentry, metalwork, or computer skills. Others attend actual classes. Math, reading, languages. Some prisoners are even taking university courses, online degrees, real education. 12 o'clock p.m. lunch break. More cooking, more eating together. 1 o'clock p.m. more work, more classes, or therapy sessions. Because here's something they don't advertise. Many prisoners are dealing with addiction, depression, trauma, mental health problems. And Iceland believes that locking someone in a tiny cell doesn't fix those things. So they provide counselors, psychologists, support groups. 6 o'clock p.m. dinner. By now, you've probably noticed something. This sounds less like punishment and more like a strict boarding school. 8 o'clock p.m. free time. Prisoners watch TV, play cards, read books. Some lift weights in the gym. Some just sit and think. 11 o'clock p.m. back to your room. Door locks, lights out. This is maximum security in Iceland. Now, before you think Iceland is just soft on crime or doesn't care about victims, let me stop you right there. Because there's something else happening here. Something that took me a long time to understand. Iceland has one of the lowest crime rates in the entire world. One of the lowest numbers of people in prison. And here's the really wild part. When prisoners leave Icelandic prisons, most of them don't come back. In America, about 7 out of every 10 released prisoners get arrested again within 5 years. 7 out of 10. The system is a revolving door. In Iceland, only about 3 out of 10 come back. And that number keeps getting lower. Something they're doing is working. But what? That's the question that kept bothering everyone who visited Litla-Hraun. Journalists, researchers, other countries' prison officials. They all came to see this impossible place. They all asked the same question. How? How do you run a prison with almost no security and not have everyone escape? How do you treat dangerous criminals like students and not create chaos? How do you build something that looks like a college dormitory and call it maximum security? The answer is buried in something most people miss. Something about Iceland itself. About its history. About the way people think when you live on a frozen island in the middle of nowhere with only 400,000 neighbors. But I'm getting ahead of myself. There's someone you need to meet first. A prisoner. Someone who did something terrible. Something that would make you angry. Something that hurt people. And that prisoner is walking around Litla-Hraun right now, learning to bake bread. If that makes you uncomfortable, good. It should. Because what happens next, what Iceland believes about punishment, about people, about second chances is going to challenge everything you were taught about right and wrong. Let me tell you about the coldest place on Earth. Not Antarctica, not the North Pole. I'm talking about a prison cell in winter. 4 concrete walls, no sunlight, no human touch, no hope. That's cold in a way that has nothing to do with temperature. But what if I told you that in the frozen land of Iceland, they build prisons that feel warm? There's a reason for that. And it starts with the question nobody wants to ask. What if the person who hurt you could change? In most countries, when someone commits a crime, we throw them away, lock them up, forget about them, out of sight, out of mind. We build prisons like we're storing dangerous objects, not dealing with human beings. Iceland looked at that system and said, that's not working. Because here's what they noticed. When you treat someone like an animal, they act like an animal. When you take away every bit of dignity, every choice, every chance to be human, you create something worse than what you started with. Think about it like this. Imagine you have a dog that bites people. You could lock that dog in a tiny cage for years, never let it out, never train it, never show it kindness. Then one day, you open the cage and release it back into the neighborhood. What do you think happens? It bites again, probably worse than before. That's what most prisons do. They make people angrier, more damaged, more dangerous. Then they release them back into society and act surprised when everything goes wrong. Iceland decided to try something crazy, something that sounds stupid until you see the results. They decided to treat prisoners like they're going to be your neighbor someday. Because they are going to be your neighbor someday, almost everyone in prison eventually gets out. That's just math. So the question isn't, should we punish them? The question is, what kind of person do we want walking out of that prison door? Do we want someone who spent years being abused and dehumanized, filled with rage and hopelessness? Or do we want someone who learned skills, dealt with their problems, and has a real chance at a normal life? Iceland chose the second option, and that choice created Litla-Hraun. Now, let me introduce you to someone. I can't tell you his real name. Privacy laws protect prisoners in Iceland, but let's call him John. That's a common Icelandic name. John is in his 30s. He has a shaved head and tired eyes. He's sitting in the woodworking shop at Litla-Hraun, carefully sanding a table he's building. His hands move slowly, precisely. This is the 14th table he's made. John is a murderer. I know. That word hits hard. It should. John took someone's life. Someone who had family, friends, dreams. Someone who woke up one morning not knowing it would be their last day. John did that. And now John is making furniture. If you're angry reading this, I understand. The family of John's victim is angry too. They'll probably be angry for the rest of their lives. Nothing can bring back the person they lost. But here's where the story gets complicated. John didn't wake up one day and decide to kill someone. John had been using drugs since he was 15. Heavy drugs. The kind that rewire your brain. He dropped out of school. He couldn't hold a job. His family tried to help, but they didn't know how. Iceland is a small country. They didn't have many drug treatment programs back then. One night, John was high, really high. He got into an argument. Things escalated, and in a moment that he can't take back, can't undo, can't fix, someone died. The court sent him to Litla-Hraun, 20 years. Now, most countries would throw John in a cell and forget about him. But Iceland asked a different question. What's broken in this person? And can we fix it? So here's what happened instead. John spent his first month in isolation, not as punishment, as assessment. Doctors evaluated him. Psychologists interviewed him. They diagnosed severe addiction and depression. They created a treatment plan. Then John entered the general population. He got his own room. He started attending Narcotics Anonymous meetings inside the prison. 3 times a week, other prisoners dealing with addiction would sit in a circle and talk, really talk, about their pain, their mistakes, their fears. John started therapy, one-on-one sessions with a counselor, twice a week. They worked through his trauma, his guilt, his self-hatred. He took classes. Basic math at first. He'd forgotten most of what he learned in school. Then reading comprehension. Then computer skills. And then, the woodworking shop. A servant named Magnus taught him how to use the tools. How to measure, cut, sand, and stain. How to create something beautiful from raw materials. For the first time in his life, John was building things instead of destroying them. After 5 years, something strange happened. John looked different. He stood straighter. His eyes weren't empty anymore. He could hold a conversation without looking at the floor. He was healing. The victim's family didn't care. They shouldn't have to care. Their pain doesn't go away because John learned to build tables. But Iceland's system isn't about making victims feel better. It's about making society safer. And here's the thing that makes people uncomfortable. It's working. Let me show you what I mean with numbers. Real numbers. In the United States, they lock up about 2 million people. That's 2 million human beings in cages. For every 100,000 Americans, about 531 are in prison right now. In Iceland, for every 100,000 people, only about 36 are in prison. That's 15 times fewer prisoners per person. Well, you might say Iceland just has less crime because it's a rich country with good social programs. Okay, fair point. Let's compare Iceland to Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland. All Nordic countries, all rich, all have good social programs. Iceland still has fewer prisoners than all of them. Something else is happening here. Here's another number that'll blow your mind. In 2022, Iceland had 0 murders. None. In the entire year. In the entire country. 0. 2023, 1 murder. 2024, 2 murders. For context, the city of Chicago had over 600 murders in 2022. Chicago is one city. Iceland is an entire country. Now, you can't give all the credit to the prison system. Iceland has lots of advantages. But here's what you can say. Their approach to punishment isn't making things worse. It might actually be making things better. Because remember what I said about prisoners coming back? In most countries, released prisoners commit new crimes at staggering rates. The system fails them, and they fail society right back. In Iceland, former prisoners are much less likely to return to crime. They get jobs. They reconnect with families. They become normal people. It's almost like treating someone with dignity gives them a reason to be dignified. Wild concept, right? But let's not pretend this is paradise. Because it's not. Life at Litla-Hraun is still prison. You still can't leave. You still can't see your family whenever you want. You still have to follow strict rules. You still lost your freedom. Some prisoners hate it. They're angry, violent, and refuse to participate in programs. Iceland doesn't have a magic wand that fixes everyone. And here's something they don't advertise. About 42% of prisoners in Iceland are foreigners. People from other countries who committed crimes in Iceland. And many of them think the Icelandic approach is ridiculous. One prisoner from Eastern Europe was interviewed and said, "This isn't prison. This is a joke. In my country, prison means suffering. Here, they treat us like children at summer camp." He didn't mean it as a compliment. He was insulted. Because in his culture, in his country, prison is supposed to hurt. It's supposed to break you. That's the point. Iceland disagrees. Iceland says the punishment is losing your freedom. That's enough. Everything else should focus on making sure you don't come back. But here's the question that keeps me up at night. Is Iceland only able to do this because they're small? Because everyone knows everyone? Because their culture is different? Could this work in a big country? Could this work in America? In Nigeria? In Brazil? Or is Litla-Hraun just a beautiful experiment that only works on a frozen island with fewer people than most cities? I don't have the answer yet, but I'm about to show you something that might help you decide for yourself. Because there's one more place we need to visit. One more piece of this puzzle. And what happens there? It's either the most brilliant idea in criminal justice, or the most dangerous mistake anyone's ever made. There's a prison in Iceland where inmates leave every morning. They walk out the gate. No handcuffs. No armed guards following them. They just leave. They go to work in regular jobs. In towns. Around normal people. Around you if you live there. And at the end of the day, they come back. This is Sogn Open Prison. And it's either genius or insanity. Let me paint you a picture of what open prison actually means. Imagine a small farm surrounded by fields. There's a fence, but it's barely waist high. A child could climb it. There are buildings that look like dormitories at a summer camp. There's a stable with horses, a vegetable garden, a workshop. About 30 prisoners live here, and every single one of them could escape in about 10 seconds. The nearest guard, probably inside having coffee. The alarm system? Basic. The consequences of running? Well, you'd get caught eventually. Iceland is a small island, but you'd have a pretty good head start. So why don't they run? That's the question everyone asks. News reporters, researchers, Tourists who accidentally drive by and think they've stumbled onto a regular farm. Why would criminals choose to stay in prison when they could just walk away? The answer is complicated and beautiful and maybe a little sad. Let me tell you about Christian. Again, not his real name, but his story is real. Christian is in his 40s. He committed fraud, stole money from the company he worked for. A lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars over several years. He got caught, went to trial, and received a 6-year sentence. He started at Litla-Hraun, the maximum security facility we talked about. He spent 2 years there, attended classes, worked in the kitchen, stayed out of trouble. Then something happened that sounds impossible. Iceland offered him a transfer to Sogn, the open prison. The prison officials told him, "You've shown good behavior. You've participated in programs. We think you're ready for more responsibility. But here's the deal: Sogn has almost no security. You'll have freedom, real freedom. And with that freedom comes a choice. You can stay and finish your sentence properly, or you can run and make everything worse." Christian chose to stay. Now, he works at a warehouse in a nearby town. Every morning, he wakes up at Sogn, eats breakfast, and drives they let him use a car to his job. He stocks shelves. He helps customers. His co-workers know he's a prisoner. His boss knows. Everyone knows. And you know what? Nobody cares. Because in Iceland, they believe something radical. Your past doesn't have to define your future. Christian works his shift. He earns a small salary. Most of it goes to pay back what he stole. Some goes to his living expenses at Sogn. A tiny bit goes to his savings account for when he's released. At 5 p.m., Christian drives back to Sogn. He has dinner with other prisoners. He watches TV. He calls his daughter, who finally started talking to him again after 3 years of silence. At 10 p.m., he goes to his room. The door doesn't even lock. He's in prison, but he's also living a life. Now, before you think this is too good to be true, let me tell you what happened to Anders. Anders was also at Sogn. He was serving time for assault. He'd been there for 8 months, working at a construction site during the day. Everything seemed fine. Then one Tuesday, Anders didn't come back. He ran. The alarm went out immediately. Police searched the area. They checked bus stations, the airport, harbors. Remember, Iceland is an island. You can't exactly blend into a crowd of millions and disappear. They found Anders 3 days later. He was hiding in a friend's basement in Reykjavik, 50 kilometers away. Hungry, tired, scared. The judge added extra time to his sentence. Anders was sent back to Litla-Hraun. He lost his open prison privileges. He lost the trust. And here's what's interesting: their prisoners at Sogn were angry at Anders. Not because they liked the guards or loved the system, but because Anders made them all look bad. He proved the skeptics right. He damaged something precious. Because Sogn isn't just a privilege. It's a statement. It says, we believe you're capable of making good choices. When someone like Anders runs, it hurts everyone. But here's the twist. Even after escape, even after being caught, even after losing everything, Anders eventually got another chance. 2 years later, after demonstrating good behavior again, Iceland sent him back to Sogn. They believed he could change. Again, most countries would have given up on Anders. One strike, you're out. But Iceland said, people mess up. That's human. Let's try again. That's either incredibly forgiving or incredibly naive. Maybe both. So let's talk about the big question. The one you've probably been asking this whole time. Does this actually work? Is Iceland's approach to prison the nice rooms, the therapy, the open facilities, the second and third chances? Is it actually making society safer? Or is it just a feel-good experiment that's waiting to explode? Here are the facts. Iceland has one of the lowest crime rates in the world. Check. Iceland has one of the lowest incarceration rates in the world. Check. Prisoners who go through Iceland's system are less likely to commit new crimes after release compared to prisoners in most other countries. Check. Iceland hasn't had a prison escape that resulted in serious crime in decades. Check. But and this is important, Iceland is also tiny, wealthy, and culturally unique. They have strong social safety nets. free healthcare, free education, low unemployment, strong family structures. So what's doing the work here? The prisons? Or everything else? Probably both. Because here's what we know for sure. Harsh prisons don't reduce crime. We've tried that experiment for centuries. In America, in Russia, in Brazil, in the Philippines. Brutal prisons, terrible conditions, long sentences. Result? More crime, more violence, more broken people. Iceland tried the opposite, and they got less crime, less violence, fewer broken people. Correlation isn't causation, sure, but at some point, you have to admit that treating people like human beings probably doesn't make things worse. Let me take you back to where we started. That lonely road in southern Iceland. The tiny village of Eyrarbakki. The prison that doesn't look like a prison. I want you to imagine something. Imagine you committed a crime. A real crime. Something that hurt people. And imagine you got caught. Now imagine two paths. Path 1. You're sent to a place where guards scream at you, where you're locked in a cell 23 hours a day, where violence is common, where you have no privacy, no dignity, no hope, where every day you become more angry, more damaged, more dangerous, where you learn new criminal skills from other prisoners, where, when you finally get out, you have no job skills, no support, and a record that makes you unemployable. What do? You probably commit another crime. Because what choice do you have? Path 2. You're sent to a place like Litla-Hraun. You have your own room. You're treated with basic respect. You attend therapy to deal with your addiction, your trauma, your mental health. You learn a trade. You take classes. You slowly become someone you're not ashamed of. When you get out, you have skills. You have support. You have a chance. What do? You probably try to build a normal life. Because now you can. Which path makes society safer? Iceland chose path 2, and their crime rate keeps dropping. Here's the thing that nobody wants to admit. Forgiveness is practical. Well, not just moral. When you help a prisoner become a better person, you're not doing it to be nice. You're doing it because that person is eventually going to live next door to someone. Maybe someone you love. Maybe you. Wouldn't you want that person to have been treated well, taught skills, given therapy, given a reason to rejoin society instead of destroy it? That's not being soft on crime. That's being smart about safety. But it requires something difficult. It requires us to see prisoners as future neighbors instead of permanent enemies. It requires us to believe that people can change, even when they've done terrible things. Iceland believes that, or at least, they're willing to try. And at Litla-Hraun, at Sogn, in those strange prisons at the end of the world, something remarkable is happening. People are changing, healing, growing. Not all of them, not perfectly, but enough to make you wonder, what if we've been doing this wrong the whole time? What if the answer to crime isn't more punishment, but more humanity? John, the prisoner I told you about earlier, the one making tables, he's going to be released next year. He's served 15 years of his 20-year sentence. Iceland is letting him out early for good behavior. He has a job lined up at a furniture company. His sister agreed to let him live with her until he can afford his own place. He's been sober for 12 years. Will he mess up again? Maybe. People are complicated, but he has a better chance than he would have had in almost any other prison system in the world. And that chance, that tiny, fragile chance at redemption, that's what Iceland is betting on. Not because prisoners deserve it, but because society deserves to be safer. And somehow, in the strangest way possible, treating people with dignity makes everyone safer, even at the end of the world, even behind bars. So what do you think? Could this system work in your country? Or is Iceland just too different? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story changed how you think about crime and punishment, hit that subscribe button. We've got more documentaries that'll challenge everything you thought you knew about the world. Thanks for watching, and remember, the truth is always stranger than fiction.